Consciousness came back slowly, like swimming up through deep water toward a light far above. Issa Whitehaven noticed softness first, the kind of amazing comfort she had never felt in her whole life. Then warmth, not the desperate fight to stay warm that had been her life for months, but real surrounding warmth that meant good blankets and a heated room. She opened her eyes to an unfamiliar ceiling, fancy and beautiful, painted with detailed designs that probably cost more than she had made in years. This wasn't the abandoned barn where she had been hiding. This wasn't any place she knew. Fear rushed through her as Isla tried to sit up, but her body fought against the movement. She was weak, muscles shaking from not being used, and her head spun with confusion. How long had she been unconscious? Where was she? What had happened? The last thing she remembered was the blizzard. She had been traveling alone through neutral territory, trying to reach the southern areas where she hoped to find work when the storm had hit without warning. She remembered the cold, the desperate search for shelter, the growing feeling that she was going to freeze to death. And then nothing, just darkness and unclear dreams she couldn't quite remember. A door opened and Issa's head snapped toward the sound. A woman entered, nicely dressed, moving with the confidence of someone comfortable in their surroundings. When she saw Issa awake, her face lit up with real joy. "Oh, thank the goddess. You're awake." The woman hurried to the bedside, acting both respectful and worried. "How are you feeling, my lady? Are you in pain? Do you need anything?" Issa's voice came out as a croak, her throat dry from not being used. "Where am I? What happened?" "You're in the royal palace of the Northern Territories, my lady. His Majesty's personal healers have been taking care of you. You were found nearly frozen to death 3 days ago." The woman poured water from a fancy pitcher into a crystal glass and held it out to Isla. "Here, drink slowly. Your body needs to readjust." Issa took the glass with shaking hands, trying to understand what she was hearing. The royal palace, His Majesty. Why would she, a nobody Omega, be in a palace being cared for by royal healers? "I don't understand," Isla managed after drinking some water. "Why am I here? I'm just a rogue Omega. Surely there's been some mistake." The woman's face changed to something Issa couldn't quite figure out. Surprise confusion. "My lady, there's no mistake. You are exactly where you're supposed to be. His Majesty himself ordered that you receive the best care, and he's been checking on how you're doing multiple times a day. His Majesty, the Alpha King." Issa felt her confusion growing. "But I've never even met him. Why would he care about a random Omega who got caught in a storm?" Before the woman could answer, the door opened again, and 2 more people entered, both wearing formal uniforms that showed they were palace staff. They bowed deeply to Isla, which only made her more confused. "My lady," one of them said respectfully, "we've prepared a bath for you and fresh clothing. If you're feeling strong enough, we can help you." "Help me with what?" Issa asked, her voice rising with frustration and fear. "Why is everyone calling me my lady? I'm nobody. I'm just Isla. I don't understand what's happening here." The 3 staff members looked at each other, and the first woman spoke gently. "My lady Isla, perhaps you should speak with His Majesty directly. He can explain everything better than we can. Would you like us to send for him?" "No, I'd like to understand what's going on right now," Isla insisted, though her shaking hands made her attempt at firmness weak. "Please, just tell me why I'm being treated like this. Why am I in a palace? What happened after I was found?" Another exchange of looks, and then the woman sighed. "You were found by His Majesty himself during a patrol. He brought you to the palace personally, ordered the healers to save your life at any cost, and has been very interested in your recovery. My lady, forgive me for being forward, but have you truly not been told anything about why you're here? About what His Majesty declared? Declared?" Isla felt ice form in her stomach. "What do you mean, declared?" The woman opened her mouth to answer, but a knock on the door stopped her. A man's voice called from outside. "Is the lady awake? His Majesty requests to be told immediately if she regains consciousness." The staff members looked at Isla with faces that suggested they were relieved someone else would have to explain whatever they were avoiding talking about. "Shall we tell His Majesty you're awake, my lady?" Issa wanted to refuse, wanted to demand answers from these people who clearly knew something she didn't. But she also realized that she wasn't going to get real explanations from staff members who were clearly uncomfortable with the situation. If she wanted to understand what was happening, she needed to talk to whoever was in charge. "Fine," she said, trying to sound braver than she felt. "But I want to get dressed first in my own clothes." Your clothing was destroyed by the cold and had to be thrown away, my lady, the woman said apologetically. But we have prepared appropriate clothes for you. If you'll allow us to help you to the bath. Isa wanted to argue, wanted to insist on doing everything herself. But her body's weakness made it clear that wasn't possible. She allowed the staff to help her out of bed and guide her to a connected room where a bath had been prepared. Not just any bath, but a huge tub filled with steaming water that smelled of oils and herbs. As they helped her bathe and dress in clothing that was far nicer than anything she had ever worn, Isla tried to piece together what little information she had. The Alpha King himself had found her, had brought her to the palace personally, had ordered a lot of care for a complete stranger, and had apparently declared something that everyone knew about except her. The dress they put her in was beautiful but simple, made of soft fabric in a pale blue that went well with her white hair and unusual coloring. Looking at herself in the mirror, Isla barely recognized the person staring back. She looked like someone important, someone valuable, someone who belonged in a palace. But she wasn't any of those things. She was just Isa, a rogue Omega with no pack and no future who had been trying not to freeze to death 3 days ago. A knock on the door made her jump. "My lady," a male voice called. "His Majesty is here to see you if you're prepared to receive him." Isa's heart hammered in her chest. Yes, I suppose." The door opened and the Alpha King entered. Isa had never seen him before. Rogues didn't generally get close enough to royalty to know what they looked like, but she would have known he was someone powerful, even without context. He gave off alpha energy in waves that made her Omega nature want to submit on instinct, but more than that, there was something about his presence that filled the entire space. He was tall and powerfully built with dark hair and striking features that would have been handsome if not for how intense his expression was. But what struck Isla most was the way he looked at her, not with the dismissal or disgust she was used to seeing when wolves noticed her albinism, but with something that looked almost like relief, or recognition, or both. "You're awake," he said, his voice deep and carrying emotion she couldn't identify. "Thank the goddess. The healer said you would recover, but seeing you conscious is—" He paused, seeming to search for words. "It means everything." Isa stared at him, trying to make sense of this reaction with her complete lack of understanding about what was happening. "Your Majesty," she began carefully, "I'm grateful that you saved my life, but I don't understand why I'm here, or why everyone is treating me like I'm someone important. I'm just a rogue Omega you happened to find. Surely you have more important concerns than... You're not just anything." The Alpha King interrupted, moving closer. "And you're definitely not just a random Omega I happened to find, Isla. Do you truly not remember anything beyond the blizzard? Nothing about how we met or what happened afterward?" "I don't remember meeting you at all," Isla admitted. "The last thing I remember is trying to find shelter from the storm. Everything after that is blank until I woke up here." Something changed in the Alpha King's expression. Concern mixed with understanding. The healers warned that might happen. They said the hypothermia and exhaustion could affect your memory. "But I had hoped," he shook his head. "I'm Darius Stormborn, Alpha King of the Northern Territories, and we need to talk about some things that happened while you were unconscious." The formal way he said it made Isla's anxiety spike. "What things?" "Your Majesty, please. Everyone keeps acting like I should know something, but I don't understand any of this. What happened?" Darius pulled a chair closer to where she stood and motioned for her to sit, taking another chair for himself. 3 days ago, I was doing a patrol of the border territories during the blizzard. We were searching for any wolves who might have been caught in the storm. That's when I found you, collapsed in the snow, barely breathing, minutes from death." He leaned forward, his eyes intense on hers. "When I reached you, when I saw you lying there dying, something happened that I hadn't expected. The mate bond formed, instant and unmistakable. You are my true mate, Isla. The one person in all of existence that the moon goddess created specifically for me." The words hit Isla like a physical blow. Mate bond. True mate with the Alpha King. That was impossible. Things like that didn't happen to wolves like her. She struggled to find words. "That's not possible. You're the Alpha King. I'm nobody. The moon goddess wouldn't pair us. There must be some mistake." "There's no mistake," Darius said firmly. "I've lived for over 200 years, Isla. I know what the mate bond feels like when it forms. And the moment I touched you, the moment my wolf recognized you as ours, everything changed. But I was unconscious. Isla protested. I didn't feel anything. How can there be a bond if I wasn't even aware of it forming? The bond forms based on the souls recognizing each other, not on conscious awareness, Darius explained gently. You'll feel it now that you're awake if you pay attention. That pull toward me, that sense of rightness when we're close, that warmth in your chest that has nothing to do with the room temperature. Issa wanted to deny it, but as he spoke, she became aware of exactly what he was describing. There was a warmth in her chest, a thread of connection pulling her toward this man she didn't know. She had assumed it was just her omega nature responding to a powerful alpha. But this was different, deeper, more fundamental. Okay, she said slowly, trying to stay calm despite her rising panic. So the mate bond formed, but that still doesn't explain why everyone is treating me like royalty. A bond is private. Most wolves don't share that information until... I declared you my chosen mate publicly, Darius interrupted, and there was something almost apologetic in his tone. The day after I found you, when I was certain you would survive, I made a formal announcement to the royal court and sent word to all the major packs. I claimed you as my mate and future queen in front of hundreds of witnesses. Issa felt the blood drain from her face. You what? I know this is overwhelming, Darius said quickly, and I know doing it while you were unconscious meant you had no say in the matter. But Ila, I had to. The mate bond is sacred and rare. Once I recognized you as mine, I couldn't risk someone else trying to claim you or dismissing you as unimportant. By declaring you publicly, I made sure you would be protected and honored as you deserve. Protected from what? Issa demanded, her voice rising. I'm a rogue Omega. Nobody wants to claim me. And you didn't ensure anything except that now hundreds of wolves know about something I didn't even agree to. You didn't have to agree, Darius said, and there was steel beneath the gentle tone. The mate bond isn't something that requires permission. It simply is. But Isla, I want you to understand. I didn't do this to trap you or take away your choices. I did it to make sure you would be safe while you recovered, that no one could harm or dismiss you, by making decisions about my life without consulting me. Issa stood up, needing to move despite her still weak legs. By telling everyone in the kingdom that I'm going to be their queen, before I even knew your name. That's not protection, Your Majesty. That's control. She saw him flinch at the accusation, saw genuine regret flash across his face. You're right, he admitted quietly. I should have waited. I should have given you the chance to wake up and make your own decisions about what you wanted. But Isla, the mate bond, when it forms, especially after centuries of waiting, it makes you irrational, possessive. My wolf insisted that everyone needed to know you were mine, that you needed to be protected at all costs. I'm not yours, Issa said, even as the mate bond in her chest protested the statement. A bond doesn't make me property, and declaring me your mate in front of witnesses doesn't change the fact that I'm a nobody who doesn't know the first thing about being queen. You're not nobody, Darius replied with quiet intensity. And you don't have to know how to be queen right now. Those are skills that can be learned. What matters is who you are as a person. And Isla, even unconscious, even just from the brief moments I've spent with you awake, I can see that you're exactly what this kingdom needs. You don't know anything about me. I know you survived alone as a rogue Omega in one of the harshest winters we've had in decades. I know you were traveling south, probably looking for work or safety, willing to risk your life rather than beg at pack borders. I know that when my healers examined you, they found evidence of old injuries that had healed without proper care, suggesting you've been surviving on your own for a long time. That tells me you're strong, independent, and resourceful. He stood and moved closer, though he was careful not to crowd her. And I know that when I found you in that snow, when I thought I might be too late to save you, something in me broke at the idea of losing my mate before I ever got to know her. That bond isn't something I chose, Ila, but it's something I'll honor for the rest of my life, whether you accept it or not. The sincerity in his voice made Issa's anger falter. She wanted to stay mad, wanted to rage against the unfairness of having her life turned upside down without her knowledge or consent. But looking at Darius, seeing the genuine emotion in his eyes, she couldn't quite keep the fury. I'm scared, she admitted quietly. 3 days ago, I was trying not to freeze to death. Now I'm being told I'm supposed to be queen of the entire Northern Territories. I don't know how to process that. I don't know how to be what everyone seems to expect me to be. Then don't try to be what they expect, Darius suggested gently. Just be yourself. That's all I'm asking for, Isla. Be the person you are. and let me prove to you that person is exactly who I need beside me. And if I can't do this, if I'm not strong enough or smart enough or whatever enough to be queen, then we'll figure it out together." He smiled, and it transformed his entire face from intimidating to almost approachable. "But I don't think you'll fail. I think you're going to surprise everyone, including yourself." A knock on the door interrupted them, and a servant entered with a bow. "Your Majesty, forgive the interruption, but the council is asking when they might meet the lady. There are also several noble families requesting audiences." Isla felt panic rise in her throat, but Darius held up a hand to stop the servant. "Tell the council and the nobles that Lady Issa is still recovering and will meet with them when she's ready. Anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me personally." The servant bowed and left, and Darius turned back to Isla. "You don't have to do anything you're not ready for. The official presentation can wait until you've had time to adjust and understand your new situation." "Is there any way to undo this?" Issa asked, though part of her already knew the answer. "The declaration, the announcement, can it be taken back?" "Technically, yes. I could announce that I was mistaken about the mate bond, or that you rejected me. But Isla, that would be a lie. The bond is real, and it's not going away whether we acknowledge it or not. And rejecting me publicly would put you in a very difficult position. A wolf who refused the Alpha King would have trouble finding acceptance in any pack. So my choices are, accept you or be even more outcast than I already was," Issa said bitterly. "No." Darius's voice was firm. "Your choices are accept the mate bond and build a life with me or don't accept it, and I'll make sure you're provided for and protected regardless. I won't force you into this, Isla, but I also won't lie and say the bond doesn't exist just to make things easier. It does exist, and we have to decide what to do about it." Issa moved to the window, looking out at grounds that were probably beautiful when not covered in snow, the palace grounds. She realized these were the Alpha King's personal gardens. This was her view now if she chose to stay. "Can I have time?" she asked without turning around. "Time to think about this, to adjust, to figure out what I want. Of course, take all the time you need. I'll make sure no one bothers you with expectations or demands." She heard him move toward the door, then pause. "Isla, for what it's worth, I'm sorry. Sorry for making that announcement before you could be part of the decision. Sorry for putting you in this position without your consent. If I could go back and do it differently, I would, but I can't change what's already done. I can only try to move forward in a way that honors your independence, while being honest about what exists between us." After he left, Isla stood at the window for a long time, trying to sort through the chaos of emotions and information. The mate bond was real. She could feel it now that she was aware of it, a warm thread connecting her to Darius, even though he was no longer in the room. Her Omega nature recognized him as its match, and some deep part of her that had been lonely for so long was singing with joy at having found its other half. But her rational mind was screaming warnings. She didn't know this man, didn't know if she could trust him, didn't know if she was capable of being what he needed her to be. Over the next few days, Issa began to slowly adjust to her new reality. The palace staff treated her with respect, bordering on reverence, always calling her my lady and asking if she needed anything. Guards were posted outside her door, not to keep her in, as she discovered when she tested it, but to protect her and help her if she wanted to go anywhere. She was given access to the palace library, where she spent hours reading about the history of the Northern Territories and the role of the Luna. She met with some of the staff who would be responsible for teaching her protocol and politics. And while everyone was patient and kind, the sheer amount of information was overwhelming. Darius visited every day, but he was careful not to push. They would talk about neutral topics, books she was reading, things she was learning, observations about the palace. He never pressured her about accepting the mate bond or pushed for any kind of physical intimacy. He just spent time with her, got to know her, allowed her to get to know him. Gradually, Isla began to understand what the staff had seen in him that made them loyal. Darius was a good leader, firm but fair, willing to listen to concerns, genuinely invested in the well-being of his people. He made decisions carefully, considering multiple perspectives before acting. And when he was wrong, he admitted it and tried to do better. He also, she discovered, had a dry sense of humor that caught her off guard and made her laugh despite herself. He was well-read and could discuss literature and philosophy for hours. He was patient with her questions and never made her feel stupid for not knowing things that someone raised in a pack would have learned. And slowly, against her better judgment, Isla found herself falling for him. It was the small things that got her. The way he always made sure she had her favorite tea available without her having to ask. The way he listened when she talked, really listened like what she was saying mattered. The way he introduced her to his most trusted advisors as my mate, whom I'm hoping will choose to accept me, giving her the power in that dynamic rather than claiming it for himself. 2 weeks after she woke up, Isla was standing in the palace gardens when Darius found her. The snow had melted enough that you could see the paths, and she was looking at the dormant flower beds and trying to imagine what they would look like in spring. "Penny for your thoughts?" Darius asked as he approached. "I was thinking about how different my life would have been if that blizzard hadn't happened," Issa admitted. "If I had made it south like I planned, if I'd found work in some pack or continued on as a rogue, I'd probably be struggling to survive, looking for my next meal, hoping I didn't freeze in the next storm. Do you wish it had gone that way?" There was vulnerability in his voice, as if her answer mattered more than anything else. "No," Isla said, surprising herself with the honesty. "I don't wish that. This is terrifying and overwhelming, and I still don't know if I'm capable of being what you need, but I don't wish I was still out there alone and afraid." She turned to face him fully. "I've been thinking about what you said, about the mate bond and about choices, and I think I understand now what you meant. You declaring me your mate wasn't you trying to control me. It was you trying to protect me the only way you knew how. And yes, it took away some of my choices, but it also gave me options I never would have had otherwise." "But," Darius prompted, clearly sensing there was more, "but I need you to understand something. If I accept this bond, if I agree to be your mate and your queen, it has to be because I choose it, not because I feel obligated, or because the alternative is worse, or because the bond makes me feel things I can't control. It has to be my choice, freely made because I want this life with you." "I understand," Darius said quietly. "And I wouldn't want it any other way. I'm not there yet," Issa continued. "I'm getting there, I think. But I need more time, more chances to know you as a person, not just as the Alpha King. More opportunities to see if I can actually do this, if I can learn to be queen without completely failing." "Take all the time you need," Darius assured her. "I've waited 200 years for my mate. I can wait longer for her to be ready." Issa smiled slightly. "What if I'm never ready? What if I always feel like I'm not good enough for this?" "Then you'll be exactly like every other leader who's ever existed," Darius replied. "The good ones always doubt themselves, Isla. It's the ones who are certain they're perfect who end up being tyrants. Your worry about being good enough tells me you probably will be." They stood in comfortable silence for a while, and Issa became aware of the mate bond humming contentedly between them. It was getting stronger the more time they spent together, and she was starting to understand what Darius had meant about it being undeniable. "Can I ask you something?" she said finally. "Anything." "That day you found me in the snow, what was your first thought when the mate bond formed?" Darius was quiet for a moment, then answered honestly. "My first thought was relief. After centuries of searching, of hoping, of wondering if I would ever find my mate, there you were. And then immediately after relief came terror, because you were dying, and I didn't know if I had found you only to lose you immediately." He looked at her with eyes that held centuries of loneliness. "I've been alone for so long, Isla. Not physically. I've been surrounded by people my entire life, but alone in the ways that matter. No one to truly connect with. No one who saw me as just Darius instead of the Alpha King. And then the bond formed, and I knew that I had finally found the one person who could be that for me." "Is that why you declared me so quickly?" Issa asked. "Because you were afraid of losing me?" "Partly, but also because I wanted everyone to know that you were valued, that you mattered, that you weren't just another rogue Omega to be dismissed or ignored. I wanted to make sure that from the moment you woke up, you would be treated with the respect you deserve. Even though I might reject you? Even then, because you deserve to be valued regardless of whether you choose to be with me. Your worth isn't dependent on being my mate, Isla. It exists independently, and I needed everyone to understand that." The sincerity in his voice, the genuine care behind his actions, even when he had made mistakes, finally broke through the last of Isla's defenses. She took a step closer to him, and then another, until they were standing close enough to touch. "I'm not ready to accept the bond completely," she said quietly. I'm not ready for a mating ceremony or to be presented as queen or any of the official things. But Darius, I'm willing to try. I'm willing to see where this goes, to give us a real chance. Because I think maybe, despite how this all started, you might actually be exactly what I need too. The smile that spread across Darius's face was radiant. That's more than I dared hope for, he said, his voice rough with emotion. Thank you for being brave enough to give this a chance, for giving me a chance. He kissed her, slowly, gently, giving her every opportunity to pull away. The mate bond blazed between them with an intensity that made Isla gasp. This was what it felt like, she realized. This was the connection that poets wrote about and artists tried to capture. This was why wolves searched their entire lives for their true mate. When they finally broke apart, both glowing with the bond's energy, Issa rested her forehead against his chest and allowed herself to feel safe for the first time in longer than she could remember. So what happens now? She asked. Now we take it one day at a time, Darius replied. You continue learning about the kingdom and your role, but without pressure or deadlines. We spend time together, get to know each other properly, and when you're ready, truly ready, we make the bond official. But only when you're ready, Issa. I won't rush you. And the court? The nobles who want to meet me? They can wait until you feel prepared to meet them. Anyone who has a problem with that will answer to me. Issa pulled back slightly to look up at him. You know, for an all-powerful Alpha King, you're surprisingly willing to accommodate one Rogue Omega's insecurities. You're not just any Rogue Omega, Darius corrected gently. You're my mate, and making sure you feel safe and valued is more important than any protocol or tradition. Besides, he added with a slight smile, I rather enjoy watching the council members squirm when I tell them they have to wait to meet you. It's good for them to remember that some things are more important than their schedules. Isla laughed, and it felt good, natural, right. She had woken up surrounded by wolves she didn't know in a place she didn't recognize, with a destiny she hadn't chosen. But maybe, just maybe, that destiny was exactly what she had needed all along. Maybe the moon goddess had known what she was doing when she formed the mate bond while Isla was unconscious, when she brought together an Alpha King who had been alone for centuries, and a Rogue Omega who had never belonged anywhere. The albino Omega, who woke up in the royal palace unaware that she had already been claimed as queen, was slowly learning that sometimes the best things in life are the ones you never saw coming. Sometimes being chosen before you know you're being chosen is exactly the gift you needed. And sometimes the Alpha King who declares you his mate before you wake up is actually the one person who will fight to make sure your choice still matters, even after the declaration is made. Issa wasn't ready to be queen yet, but standing in the garden with Darius, feeling the mate bond warm and real between them, she thought she might be ready to try. And that was enough for now.